On the 26th of September 1992, at about 5:27 p.m., a fully loaded aircraft took off from runway 19 at the Murtala Muhammad International Airport in Lagos. The aircraft was a Nigerian Air Force C-138H Hercules military transport aircraft. Designed and built by Lucky, the pilot, 40-year-old Wing Commander Justice Para-Iwe Alabosin and his co-pilot Wing Commander Mamadi had their eyes set on their destination, the city of Kaduna in northern Nigeria. Many of his passengers were middle-ranking Army, Navy, and Air Force officers attending a 9-month senior division course at the Armed Forces Command and Staff College in Jaji, Kaduna State. Alabosin, one of the finest pilots in the Nigerian Air Force, was promoted to a wing commander only 24 hours earlier. He had previously averted a disaster with a C-138 Hercules aircraft. When 2 of its engines failed in mid-air, he received multiple accolades for this feat, and even got a guarantee of employment from the manufacturer of the plane, Lockheed Corporation. However, on that fateful day, 1992, just a few minutes after takeoff from Murtala Muhammad Airport, things went terribly wrong for Alabosin and the passengers of the C-138 aircraft and ANEF 911. Only 3 minutes after takeoff, the first engine failed and the plane started to glide dangerously low. The pilots attempted to make a return to base. It was a race against time, but it was a race they were bound to lose. Then a second engine failed. They decided to ditch the aircraft inside the Lagoon Bow Canal and even deployed the water landing gear. Then the third engine also gave way. 3 out of the 4 engines had failed. When the aircraft was barely 500 feet above the ground, it all happened so fast in just 3 minutes. The aircraft was lying in a tropical mangrove swamp after it narrowly missed a creek nestled among the raffia palms. The NEF 911 crashed a mere 10 kilometers away from the airport. All passengers on board were killed. C-130 aircrafts have 4 engines, 2 on each side. It can manage to fly with 3 engines or in worse conditions with 2, 1 on each side. The NEF 911 had only 1 functional engine when it crashed. 90% of the 32-meter-long aircraft was submerged in the deep-sea swamp not too far from the Lagos State low-cost housing estate in Ejibo. The Eagle had crashed, and with it came crashing the dreams of a whole generation of officers. Some of the very best of the African military trapped in the belly of the aircraft were several majors who were full of dreams and ambitions that in about 9 months, stars would be added to their Eagles and they would become the newest lieutenant colonels in town. Also trapped were their colleagues from the Nigerian Air Force with the ranks of squadron leader and lieutenant commanders from the Navy. Swallowed in the belly of the sea, 130 were also young students of the Nigerian military school Zaria, alongside civilians, relations and friends of military officers, some of whom either were accompanying their proud wards to Kaduna, and those who just joined for a casual lift. Unconfirmed sources at Jaji put the death toll between 200 and 300, saying that the passengers included many officers recently transferred from Jaji and Zaria, but who still had to go back to collect their salaries as payments in their new posting had not been formalized. Many other civilians who regularly enjoyed free rides with their military friends were also believed to have been trapped in the disaster for an aircraft designed to have a maximum payload of 21 tons and a true paratroop capacity of 150 men. The aircraft was clearly overloaded. The government, however, maintained an official figure of 159 passengers. The crash revealed the utter helplessness of the rot called the Nigerian Air Force. If the exact figure of the passengers was not clear, what was very clear is that no single soul survived the crash. And to date it remains one of the worst military aviation disasters worldwide. The crash wiped off many fine and brilliant officers of the 1920, 21 and 22 regular courses of the Nigerian Defense Academy were badly hit. The list of the 159 names officially listed as passengers of the Hercules plane released on the 1st of October 1992 included 7 lieutenant colonels and 96 majors from the Nigerian Army. The Air Force lost 26 officers including the pilots and the crew. The Nigerian Navy lost 16 lieutenant commanders, the Canadian Armed Forces lost 5 officers while Tanzania, Zimbabwe and Uganda lost 1 officer each. The aircraft was one of the first in the Air Force fleet and it was reportedly long overdue for major repairs and overhaul. Inside sources claim the Air Force had found it very difficult to overhaul its fleet owing to lack of funds. The crashed NEF 911 was to be flown to Germany on the 27th of September for repairs. Although the Air Force image makers tried to whitewash the whole thing, The Nigerian Air Force was in a mess, it was poorly funded and was neck-deep in debt. A German company representative in Nigeria at the time of the disaster said the Nigerian Armed Forces was owing them an outstanding sum of 500 million Deutsche Mark. About 6.6 billion naira, with the Nigerian Air Force carrying the bulk of that debt. The next day, the 27th of September, the ever-busy officers' mess at the Command and Staff College became a ghost town, emptied of its vibrant atmosphere. The 150 cars purchased for the dead officers from the 500 million naira loan given to military officers simply waited for owners who would never return. It was a very dark day for all the Jaji. Probably the most heartbreaking chapter of the story was the tardiness with which the rescue attempts were handled. The top military commanders who were supposed to coordinate the whole rescue effort did not even know anything had gone wrong until hours later. There was no functional helicopter from the Air Force to convey a rescue team, not until a private airline Aero Contractors provided them with one. The team got to the scene 40 minutes after the crash but could not provide an immediate rescue operation, and the officers would remain trapped in the aircraft wreckage until about 16 hours later when the first corpse was eventually lifted from the site. It was a day of disgrace for the Nigerian Air Force. Even though it had 6 large Puma helicopters for search and rescue. Not one was okay, they were all scrap material. Nigeria simply did not have the machinery or system to initiate, conduct or coordinate such a sophisticated rescue operation. The governor of Lagos State, Sir Michael Otedola, had to call in Julius Berger to assist with pulling out the aircraft. For the investigation, the Nigerian government set up a board of inquiry in early October 1992. The board was made up of service chiefs and aviation experts, with Rear Admiral Alec Bede heading the panel. To this day, 3 years later, its report has never been formally released to the public, fueling a lot of conspiracy theories. On the 5th of October 1992, bodies of the victims were lowered into their graves in Abuja, signaling the end of an entire generation of officers. Although they died in the most tragic circumstances, their nation buried them with all the pomp and pageantry. In August 2021, some newspapers reported that 30 years after the crash, the families of the victims of the disaster remained abandoned. The promises made to them by the Babangida government remain unfulfilled, promises that included houses, cars and training of the children of the officers. Others who paid the supreme price while on national duty to the country were never honored. It is noteworthy that a few states, particularly Lagos, Ogun, Oyo, Osun and Ondo states, provided decent houses to widows of officers from the states. In Benue State, dilapidated houses were allocated to the widows. Abia State would only provide house if widows provide lands. In fact, most of the widows and their children were thrown out of their various barracks even before accommodations were provided outside the barracks for them. Most states in the north, however, failed to provide accommodation relief to the widows. Apart from the disregard to the terms of conditions of service, the widows were also denied their husbands' gratuities. The pujokas given to military officers of the rank of captain and above were denied some of those whose husbands were not privileged to receive before the crash. The only thing that was built to immortalize these officers was a cenotaph at the senior course students' hostel at the Armed Forces Command and Staff College at Jaji, Kaduna.